Hello, I'm the Gypsy. I am the founder of American Ghost Writers, and this is my wife, Debbie.
Mrs. Gypsy, spelled D-E-B-B-I-E.
And of course, Gypsy spelled G-Y-P-S-Y. We travel to different places on our motorcycles, and we check out the history of the places. And when we're checking out the history of the places, we also look at the paranormal aspect. We don't believe that spirits dwell just in buildings or in structures of different types. We also believe that they dwell out in the open, a lot of different places. And that's what led us to the Mount Hope Cemetery on Halloween night of 2008 and 2009.
Yes, we did go to the cemetery. It's basically one of the largest cemeteries. It's a mile long, and it's got one of the longest continuous stone walls around it.
The wall is about a mile long on both sides and a quarter mile long on the north and south end. This makes this wall roughly about 2.5 miles long. The cemetery is located in the center of Independence, Kansas, and it's called the Mount Hope Cemetery. It's a very historical cemetery. It has several different famous people buried there. William Inge, the famous playwright who wrote Bus Stop.
Yeah, Picnic, Splendor in the Grass.
Dark at the Top of the Stairs. It also has a former governor of Kansas that's resting there, Governor Humphreys. And it has Marshal Charles T. Conley. Now, Marshal Conley is not a familiar household name, but what he did is, he was the marshal that confronted the Dolphin Gang when they did their famous raid on October 5th in 1892 in Coffeyville, Kansas. He was shot and killed during the raid, and he is buried there in the cemetery.
And we might add that William Inge did commit suicide.
Yes, he committed suicide, died a very violent death. These people that we mentioned, Marshal Conley and William Inge, both died violent deaths. There's also a couple of Civil War heroes buried in the cemetery, and they died during the Civil War, so their deaths also were violent. This may be why there's so much activity in the Mount Hope Cemetery, and it is a very active cemetery. Debbie, why don't you tell them about what we kind of caught that night on the first night that we went out.
Well, again, it was October 31st, Halloween, 2008, and we had gone through the first part of the cemetery. We'd been through it before, during the day, but it's very active. Spirits are a lot more active, and the supernatural seem to come out in droves during the Halloween. So, yeah, we walked through and everything felt normal, and we continued through it and got kind of to the middle part. It's really a long cemetery. It takes 4 or 5 hours probably.
Well, yeah, if you're just strolling and going down the different roads, it would take just a casual stroll through the cemetery and going down the different paths and roads that go through the cemetery, it would easily take 4 to 5 hours to do it. It is a very large cemetery.
Yeah, we got toward the middle part, and I started feeling really uneasy, sick to my stomach, even kind of off balance.
We started to go down this one road that goes back by the maintenance sheds, and Debbie immediately noticed something that was going on back by the maintenance sheds. It was a light, right?
Yeah, flickering over and over, on and off, on and off.
And this wasn't like a normal flicker, how if the light's going out, it'll just flicker. This particular light would go out and stay out for a few seconds, then come on and stay on for a few seconds, but it wasn't timed. It was like, it might be longer one time, it might be shorter another time. And we kept standing there watching this light. It was very odd. It seemed like it would stay on, but if we started to approach down the road, it'd suddenly go off. We'd back up, the light would come back on. And it was at this point that Debbie said,
I just was basically shocked seeing this light go on and off, and I felt like someone was following us.
and we were not getting a good feeling about going down that road. It was very dark feeling, very unnerving. So we decided that we would not take that path through the cemetery. What we decided was that we would go a different way. Right at that point, the road forks. So instead of going to the right, we went to the left. And we had gone about 100 yards or so when suddenly the temperature just dropped.
It was cold.
And Debbie told me at that point,
I think we need to go. It was just not right.
and it wasn't feeling good at all, so she suggested that I take a picture. So I snapped a picture, quickly snapped a picture there, and it was when we got home that we kind of discovered something unusual. We were reviewing the evidence, and Debbie was listening to some of the recordings we made, and I was going through the photographs, and I got to the picture that we had snapped at that point, and it was unbelievable. Not only had the temperature dropped 20 degrees in that area, but in the photo that we had snapped, there were hundreds of orbs. The sky was just thick with them, all shapes, all sizes, all colors. In most pictures you see one colored orb, and they're transparent. These were solid orbs. They were of different colors, but it was the one orb, Debbie noticed it first, that really made the hair on the back of our neck stand up. Debbie, you want to tell them what that was?
It had a signature to it. I mean, you could actually tell the difference between it and every other orb out there. And we must have caught it in about 6 or 7 pictures. It was following us around the cemetery.
Yeah, several pictures this orb showed up in. And we were just kind of, oh my God, it wasn't like pictures. A lot of times when you take them and you have orbs in them, the orbs are all different. They're not the same. This was the same, absolutely the same. Round orb, small dot in it, very colorful, almost kaleidoscopic. And we had picked it up in several pictures. And as we're looking at this orb, I looked down, and that's when we saw the second thing that made the hair on the back of our neck stand up. There was an orb that had a face of a lady coming out of it.
Over a gravestone.
Over a gravestone. You didn't have to guess. You didn't have to use your imagination. Go, well, that kind of looks like. There was no kind of look like about it. It was. It is the definite face of a woman with her eyes closed, and the hair is flowing out of the orb to the left of the orb. And we were just like, wow. We blew up the picture, and we were in shock. We showed the picture later on to several people, and we didn't say anything about it. And everybody that's seen it saw the same thing. Lady's face coming out of the orb. So that was during our post-investigation that we discovered that. Getting back to where we were right after we took the picture, we, as Debbie said, decided to leave the cemetery. Well, we were walking down the main center road that runs north and south from the cemetery. And I was snapping pictures as I go along, take a picture here, take a picture there. And one picture that I took when we were looking at it in the post-investigation is this shot looking down the road, and you got these big, beautiful trees on either side of the road. And you can see a couple orbs in there, but there's one orb in particular that's to the right of the picture and down low towards the ground. And it intrigued me because, again, it was one of those solid orbs. Now, it wasn't the signature orb that we had talked about earlier. This was a solid orb. And I blew up the picture. And suddenly, what did we discover? But we have another face inside an orb. It's the face of a man, and who was like wearing glasses, right? He had glasses on. And he looked, I don't want to say he looked evil, but there was something that wasn't nice about him. It was funny, where the picture of the woman's face coming out of the orb. She looked peaceful. She did. She looked at rest, didn't she? This guy looked, how would you describe him? He looked not evil, but
Sinister?
sinister. Yeah, sinister. He was not right, and it just, not much scares me. I've been visiting cemeteries for years. I grew up in a haunted house, had 7 spirits in it. That's what got us involved in the first place to, you know, form American Ghost Writers, was both of our love for the supernatural. But this here, it was just...
Maybe he was the one that followed us.
It could have been.
Earlier.
It could have been. But we took these pictures and we were heading out of the cemetery. And it was, probably about, 40 degrees out and no wind that night.
Nothing.
Very calm night. Stars were out overhead, very clear night. And probably about 10 o'clock at night, right around then, when we were heading out of the cemetery. And as we're heading towards the exit gate, I looked at Debbie and I said, is it just me, or are we being followed?
I felt it too.
She felt it too. So I kind of did a funny little thing. I had the camera in front of me and I was holding it down like this in front of me, with my finger on the trigger, on the shutter button. And we're walking and I said, well, I'm not going to turn around and look. I refused to turn around and look. I'm not going to do it. And I spun around and snapped, just as quick as I could.
Well, you didn't snap. You snapped the picture.
Well, I snapped the picture. Yeah, I didn't snap it. I snapped the photo. Thank you for correcting me.
Yes.
Anyway, I snapped the photo. We went out of the cemetery. It was the very last photo we took in the cemetery, so it was very easy to identify when we were doing the pulse follow-up. What we saw in the photo just, again, made the hair on the back of our necks stand up. It was one of the largest orbs either one of us had ever seen in a photograph. It's huge, and it was directly behind us. Now, we had taken the precaution of when we got to the gate of the cemetery, and we do this all the time whenever we investigate cemeteries or any place else, we tell the spirits, we turn around and tell them, don't follow us. You're not allowed to follow us out here. This is where you belong. And of course, we did the same with this, so we didn't have the feeling like it had followed us home. But yet, there it was in the picture. It wasn't the signature orb, it wasn't the other orbs that had the faces in them. It was just that one very large orb, almost like it was a guardian, and it was seeing us to the gate. Now, we investigated again the next year.
2009.
Mount Hope Cemetery again, Independence, Kansas. This time, we had our friend Leslie Whitson with us. She'd heard about our first investigation, wanted to go with us. And we had Jim Bennett, who is the sexton of the cemetery, and his wife. He said that he'd show us some interesting spots in the cemetery. Now, one of the first things we had decided to do, we had discussed this, was to do EVP work over by the grave of William Inge. Honey, you want to tell them what happened?
Well, our friend Leslie Whitson was asking if there was anyone who would like to speak to us. And, well, the EVP, it speaks for itself.
Yeah. There's a voice, very small voice.
You can hear it clear as day. It says, not right now.
No, it said yes first. She said, do you want to speak to us?
Yes.
Yeah, and then...
Is there anyone that you'd like us to contact? Leslie asked, and that's when the spirit said, not right now.
Not right now. Very clear. What is really amazing about this particular EVP was there was a band competition going on at a nearby stadium that night. And in the EVP recording, you can hear the band competition in the background. But at the point where Miss Whitson says, do you want to talk to us? You can't hear the band competition anymore. It's like the recording goes silent. And there's a couple of second pause, and then you hear the
whisper.
Yes. And then when she says, is there anyone that you'd like us to contact? Again, it gets silent. It gets dead silent. Like the entire air around us just became a sound barrier to anything else that was happening outside that one small area. And you hear the, not right now.
Do you want to say something? somebody you want to contact.
It was very chilling. When we listened to it on headphones, we were just like, it was a jaw dropper. It was one of the clearest EVPs we'd ever picked up in our entire life.
And it was direct response to the question.
It was an intelligent EVP. And it wasn't like a loop. It wasn't like a recording, like someone saying the same thing over and over again. It was a direct response to a direct question or questions. Anyway, that night, we had a whole bunch of surprises in store for us. When we looked at the photographs in the post-investigation, almost every single photograph was full of orbs. The orbs were thick that night. I don't know what it was about this Halloween night that was different. I don't know if the band competition at the nearby stadium was disturbing the spirits that night and they were up in droves. Maybe they were partying. Maybe they liked the music over at the stadium.
And something we might point out too to the viewers is that we always snap 2 shots at exactly the same spot, to clarify whether or not there's really something there.
Which she brings up a good point. There's one set of photos that I have always concluded in our report on this particular investigation. I took the picture and it wasn't more than a second later I took the second picture. The first picture has this mist and these orbs, and there's just mist going across the picture. You can see 2 trees in the background. There's an evergreen and there's what looks to be like a maple tree over to the left of the evergreen. The second picture that I snapped, there are no orbs and there's no mist in there. It is the only picture I snapped that night where we showed a mist, where a mist came up in. But it is definitely, there's a mist up here and it's going down here. I need to make it clear, it wasn't cold that night. It was in the 50s. There's no way that it was our breath showing across the camera. A lot of people go, oh, well, that's your breath.
That's a thick breath.
That's thick breath, yeah. I don't breathe that much. We don't smoke, so it wasn't that. We had taken video that night on our first investigation in 2008. We didn't take video. We caught 2 things on video that night that we didn't physically see them. I wish we would have. It would have been great if we could have seen them. But we did catch them on the video. One, and okay, again, I want to clarify this because of the skeptics out there, the ones that will say, oh, it was this. There were no insects out that night. None. It was too cool. We'd had a few cold streaks the couple of days before. This is Kansas, remember. This is Kansas in the fall. We'd already had frost on the pumpkin. You know, leaves were falling from the tree. And so there was no insects out. But yet, in one video, we catch this long streak going up left side of the frame. And it's quick. We slowed it down, we looked at it in the stills. There's no way this is an insect. It's some sort of solid object that's just streaking across. In another one, and this is another one of those ones where chills happen, where the hair stood up on the back of our necks. Our friend Leslie recommends that we shoot in one part of the cemetery. It's over towards the old Catholic section. And it's very dark in that section. And I start filming over in that part of the cemetery, and all of a sudden, we get this movement across the lens. Looks big and square. But when we stopped it, when we took and looked at the frames, there's a face materializing in it. Happens for a second, the face looks like it's trying to materialize, and then just disappears, and it moves out of the frame. Again, these were post-investigation things that we discovered. After we had filmed them, we had no idea they were happening at the time. We could not physically see them happening. The one thing, and I'm going to let you tell about it, the tree.
Weird. And we don't know where this came from, but we clicked up some pictures in the trees, and there's a white image that looks like a moth or a butterfly, but it's like the image has been cut out. It's almost like a cutout, like a paper doll.
To put it into perspective, the thing up against that tree is every bit 18 inches long.
It was big.
It's huge.
It's like way bigger out of proportion than a normal insect.
But she's right. It looks like you take a white piece of paper, cut a moth out of it or a butterfly,
And stick it
up on the tree. I went back the next morning to have a look at the tree myself, because when we saw it in the post-investigation, on the photos in the post-investigation, we were at a complete loss. We could not explain it at all. So we decided to go back the next morning and have a look. I went to the tree. I looked up at it. I thought, well, maybe someone had an ornament up in the tree. You know, people decorate graves. Maybe an ornament blew up in the tree. There was nothing there. There was not a thing. Not one thing. We, to this day, have yet to be able to explain it. Ghost moths? Who knows? You know.
Ghost insects?
Yeah, ghost insects. If insects have ghosts, there's going to be a lot of them out there. We don't know what it was. It was very odd. But on both investigations, 2008 and 2009, we discovered quite a few things that we have yet to be able to explain. Marshall Conley, we captured a streak like the one we caught on video, but this was in a photo over by his grave. Okay, it seemed like there was a whole lot of activity, more activity going on in 2009 than 2008.
Oh, we can't forget the sexton, what he told us.
Go ahead.
We questioned him about the lights flickering the year before over there. And he said that he has seen that happen multiple times. He's changed the lights. He's redone the electricity, the wiring, and everything.
He said he actually...
Still happens.
And he said he actually had a guy quit because of this. The guy had been working for a month or so, and they'd redone the wiring and redone the lights. And the guy had been by the cemetery at night. There's a road that separates the cemetery from the park where that stadium's at. And the guy had been by there and saw the lights flickering on and off, and the guy was so spooked by it, knowing that they had fixed whatever the problem could have been, that he quit. He refused to come back out there again. Sexton told me that that his guys basically don't want to go out at night. If something happens out at the cemetery at night, he's the one that goes out. And we asked him, we said, well, does it bother you to go out? And he said, yeah. You know, but he gets paid to do it. So, all in all, Mount Hope Cemetery in Independence, Kansas, in our opinion, is extremely haunted and extremely active, especially on Halloween night. We have gone there on different nights other than Halloween night, and it wasn't as active. But the two Halloween nights we went in 2008 and 2009, I would say we definitely got our money's worth on that location.
Yes, we did.
Well, we thank you for listening to our story, and I don't think we forgot anything. If we did, you can ask us about it later, and you know, we'll be sure to tell you. But
you can check our website.
Yeah, you can look at our website too, www.freaky-links.com. We got videos and EVPs on there. One thing that everybody always wants to know, and we'll be glad to answer that for you right now. People ask, do you believe in ghosts?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you bet we do. We believe in ghosts strongly, and we believe that there are things out there in the world that cannot be explained, but being the humans that we are, we always have to try to explain them. Thank you for listening to our story, and hope to talk to you soon.
See you on the road.
Bye-bye.